This conference will now be recorded.
I had never seen the recording tab on the top of the screen before. Is that something new?
No, it's always been there, Pete.
Is it? Okay.
To you, Councillor Barber, that's our backup recording. So if the live stream were to drop, we have an internal recording of it as well that we could post.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening, and everyone is in attendance. As a general rule, I remain silent during the moment of reflection and respect to allow members of the community, council, and staff to reflect peacefully on matters of personal, individual concern or importance. For this evening's moment of reflection and respect, I wanted to offer some words in light of horrifying news that affects all of us. The discovery of the remains of 215 children that were found buried at a former residential school in Kamloops, British Columbia. Aylmer joins communities across Canada in mourning these children. As a sign of respect and mourning, town flags have been lowered for 215 hours. Our thoughts are with the children, their families, their communities, and all who are most affected by this terrible discovery. This latest development is a reminder for all of us to continue to learn the truth of the lands we call home and to stand behind our Indigenous brothers and sisters. In the days and weeks to come, as we turn our minds to the next steps, we pledge to keep our minds and hearts open, to acknowledge we have much to learn and walk alongside Indigenous communities. At this time, I invite all to join me in a moment of reflection and respect to honor the 215 innocent lives that were lost. Thank you. Our first item of business is the confirmation of the agenda.
The council adopts the agenda for the meeting of June 7th, 2021 as presented.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into delegations and public meetings. And we do have a public meeting this evening. So the resolution for that, please, Josh.
The council do now commence a public meeting under the Planning Act at 7:03 p.m. to receive input from the public with respect to the staff report CAO 2321 entitled Forest Street Draft Plan of Condominium.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Barber and Councillor Oslach. Are there any questions or concerns? Councillor Ham? Do you have a concern? Okay, sorry, I thought I'd seen your hand up there. Okay, so there's no questions or concerns. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Tonight, we will be considering an application made by Faring Holdings, owners of property known municipally as 85 Forest Street, Aylmer. Please take notice that the town of Aylmer will hold a public hearing in accordance with Section 51 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 as amended, on Monday, June the 7th, 2021 at 7 p.m. The application is made by Faring Holdings SAB Developments, the owners of property known municipally as 85 Forest Street in the town of Aylmer. The applicant is seeking draft plan approval for a condominium for recommendation to Elgin County. The application consists of 22 units. The accompanying key map is the corresponding staff report, shows the location of the lands to which the draft plan approval for a condominium applies. Also take notice that signed written submissions shall be accepted by the town clerk prior to. Such submissions shall be available for inspection by any interested party. In addition, if a party who is notified does not attend the hearing, the committee can proceed and the party is not entitled to any further notice of hearings. Due to COVID-19 precautions, meetings will be held electronically. Any person may attend the virtual public meeting and or make written or verbal representation in support of or in opposition to the proposed draft plan approval for a condominium. Those wishing to comment during the public hearing were required to pre-register by contacting the deputy clerk prior to noon on Monday, June the 7th, 2021. The virtual public meeting is currently available on www.aylmer.ca. Also take notice if a person or public body that files an appeal of a decision of the corporation of the town of Aylmer in respect of the proposed draft plan approval for a condominium does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the corporation of the town of Aylmer before a decision is made, the local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. A copy of the decision will be mailed to those persons who make representation at the hearing and those who have filed a written request with the clerk for council's decision. Council will hear comments in the following order. So we'll start out with the applicant agent. And I don't believe the applicant agent is here this evening. Are they, Andy? Are they planning to attend?
Through you, your worship, I do know he did request the link, so I sent him the link today, but he doesn't appear to be on the call, but he was just going to be in attendance to answer any questions that council might have.
Okay, thank you, Andy. We'll move on to the next item then. The Chief Administrative Officer, any questions, additional comments based on council questions? So basically, if you can give us an overview and then we will take some questions from council.
Thank you, your worship. So at a high level, this is an application that has been around the block a couple times. It is for the property at 85 Forest Street. It was originally approved in 2009. Subsequently, they let development agreement lapse. When they came back, there was issues around the existing 3 units and the existing condominium corporation, the need to make a shared services agreement with them. That kind of slowed things down. They were also looking at purchasing another piece of property adjacent to it, and that kind of got tied in. So this application was taken up again in 2016 in earnest and abandoned after a couple years. And this would be the third attempt almost at the application. The one thing that stands out to me is that the municipality has gone well beyond the statutory timelines for addressing this application. There was an extension given during COVID-19, but we still did go well beyond it. So I think in terms of trying to improve services, one of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that we're hitting those timelines more in the future. Even if staff have negative comments about an application, it's always better to meet the statutory timeline. And I think perhaps we've been a little bit lucky that we haven't had LPAT appeals very much because it's always better to get out in front of this. But the thoroughness of the review of this in 2009 was very stringent, because at that time the ministry was the approval authority. So this has gone through multiple engineers reviews and the ministry's review as well. So I'm very confident that if council passes it tonight, it'll be approved by county council, and then we can get this application underway quickly this year. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Barber. You're on mute, Councillor Barber.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Worship. To Andy, could you talk a little bit about the water connection issue?
Yes, so the water connection issue is an issue with the existing 3 units. It's interesting because we're hoping, and the developers agreed, he's already approached the condominium corporation to ask them if during this work that he can replace that line for them. But the problem is it looks like that they likely procured less than ideal piping there, and I think it wasn't anything ill intent on their part. It was just there was a lot of bad piping going around at the time, and now there is some water loss between our roadway where our connection ends and where their meters are, and we're aware of that. So if they don't agree and don't reach some agreement to replace that, it's likely that the town is going to come back to that 3-person unit and require them to undertake some work in the future regardless. So it makes sense for them to get on board with it now and to fix this up as the other work is going on, so that it's a bit of a cost savings for them.
Follow up, if I may, would this be considered then a second condominium within the same project?
Yes, that is correct. So it would be an entirely different condominium corporation. So it would be, that was part of the challenge and complicated nature of this that led to such a thorough review, was that it would have to be 2 condo corps on essentially the same land.
Thank you.
Councillor Oslatch.
Yes, Your Worship. To Andy or Rob, I understand there's a municipal drain that runs under that property. Is with a condominium construction, will that interfere with that municipal drain?
I'll take a first shot at it, and maybe Rob will jump in. So it has been through the engineer's review. So that drain should not be impacted, and I know the units in that area, the developer is going to put sub pumps in there just to make sure that they don't encounter any additional issues. But with that, they said that the creek there, kind of that runs back at the edge of the property, should not be impacted.
Because that goes directly into Catfish Creek. I understand, yeah.
Okay, are there any further questions from council? Okay.
Oh, Your Worship, Aldo has just arrived as well.
Yes, I just seen that he's here. We kind of passed your segment, Aldo, but do you have anything you'd like to add to this as we're talking, or would you like to hear comments more and then you can answer the questions or whatever? It's up to you, Aldo.
No, I'm fine. We can, whatever, if you need some questions answered, hopefully I can help, but I seen the report and it was pretty straightforward.
Okay, thanks, Aldo.
Thank you.
All right, Josh, just for clarification, we don't have any members of the public here this evening, do we?
Through you, Your Worship, that's correct. There are no public members of the public that registered to speak at the public meeting this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. So you're up next, Josh. If there's any additional communications that were received with respect to this application.
Through your worship, no additional communications were received with respect to the application.
Okay, thank you. And back to the CAO, did you have any further comments or clarification items that you'd like to share?
No, through you. Perhaps now that Aldo is here, it might be fair for Councillor Oshlat's question to be put to him. Aldo, he was just asking about the municipal drain at the back of the property, and that won't have any impact with the development.
No, the municipal drain will not be touched as per the site plan that was originally submitted. No, we won't have anything to do with that. And as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, even the storm is draining into the storm system, not even the open drain, so.
Okay, thanks, Aldo. Are there any other comments that we want to discuss or anything? Any questions for Aldo? Okay, seeing none, just happy to see this in front of us this evening, Aldo. It's been a long time coming.
I want to thank everyone because it's been a challenge, but I think we're back on track, and everyone's been more than helpful in this situation. And I think you will have a very nice showpiece once we're done.
Thank you, Aldo. Okay, with no further comments, questions, Josh, do you have the resolution, please?
Certainly, that council do now adjourn the public meeting at 7:15 p.m.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And next resolution, please.
That report CAO 2321 respecting Forest Street draft plan of condominium be received as information, and that council grant draft plan approval for the Forest Street application of condominium upon fulfillment of the conditions as outlined in the bylaw, and that council consider waiving the rules of order to proceed to third reading of the draft plan approval Forest Street application of condominium development agreement bylaw, and that upon approval of the draft plan of condominium by Elgin County and expiry of the statutory notice and appeal periods, the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the development agreement as outlined in the bylaw, and further that no comments from the public were made upon the application or at the statutory public hearing, and as a result did not form part of council's decision.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Ham and Councillor Charlton. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Next item up is minutes to approve.
That council approves the following minutes. Regular virtual meeting of council held on May 17th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oshlat and Councillor Chapman. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Next item is minutes to receive.
That council receives the following minutes. Main Street Elmer BIA meeting held on March 15th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Ham and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is the consent agenda.
That item 7.1 to 7.21 of the June 7th, 2021 consent agenda be adopted as presented with actions to be taken as noted.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Barber and Councillor Ham. Are there any items that you'd like to discuss? Councillor Oshlat first and then Councillor Chapman.
Yes, I would like to pull consent agenda 714.
Okay.
And I think we should send a letter of support to the municipal of West Elgin, support of Phragmites, because I think the Ministry of Transportation isn't doing enough for Phragmites could control along our highways, and Phragmites is a noxious weed, an invasive weed, and grass that proliferates all over southern Ontario, and it's becoming a very, very aggressive grass for wetlands and roadsides, and it impedes the wildlife and all the adjacent areas. I think we should send a letter of support.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Oslach. And just talking to the other members of council, are you in agreement with Councillor Oslach? Do you believe that we should be sending in a letter? Okay, we'll deal with that then after we've all had our chance to discuss the consent agenda. Councillor Chapman.
For you, your worship, I have 3 items.
Okay.
7.15, 7.17, and 7.19.
Okay.
So the first one is capital gains on the sale of a family home. I think that we pay enough taxes, and asking to pay taxes on the sale of a personal home is going above and beyond what's necessary, and it really will impact the ability for a family to move to another home. So I think that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
So do you want me to continue with the others, or?
Yes, if you don't mind, Councillor Chapman, and then once you've completed all your thoughts on the items that you picked, then we'll discuss it further.
Okay, so item 717 is just let me have the right one. I'm sorry, my note says hospital funding, and that's not what I'm reading here. I have the wrong
It's to
item.
do with the Planning Act, Councillor Chapman.
That's not. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, it's item 716 that I want.
Okay.
So it's about funding to the hospitals. And it says, please be advised, Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie, in a meeting on May 31st, received support correspondence for Corporation of Town of Perth. I'm just going to read it briefly here. I'm going to skip through. Requesting the further consideration of given to having the province be financially responsible for the replacement costs associated with all major capital equipment and hospitals, and alternative assume full responsibility for funding local hospital completely. We have a lot of things already on our shoulders as a municipality, and if they're asking us to support our hospitals as well, we don't have enough income into the municipalities to continue to do this. So we do need support from the provincial government. And so I would like to show our support for this. And then 719 is it's about the environment and how the microfibers from washing our clothes are going out into the lakes, which is where our water source comes from. So they're proposing that a filter be put on washing machines to help the microfibers from going out into the waterways. And I'm not exactly sure if that's the solution, but I just wanted it to be brought to attention what is happening to our waterways, and if there's something that we can do to help prevent that from happening. I know that our wastewater is treated and everything, but those microfibers are still getting out into the waterways, and if there's something we can do to help prevent that, I'm all about saving the environment. So those are the 3 items that I'd like to.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. So just turning it back over to council, what do you think about some of these items? Are you in agreement with Councillor Chapman that we should be writing a letter of support for these 3 initiatives? Are you okay with that? Supporting Councillor Chapman? Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for information purpose, Township of Archipelago is completely serviced by private septic systems. If at all, it's a sparsely populated recreational area and no municipal services at all anywhere within the township. So they're asking in effect, their people to make sure their effluent from their washing machines isn't negatively impacting the water system. And I think that's a big difference from built up areas. Just my thoughts.
Councillor Chapman?
Could we get Rob's input on that? To like, is there any of the microfibers that escape our lagoons into the waterway?
Rob, would you care to answer that question, please?
Sure. I know microfibers are a growing area of concern. And let me first say, I believe our regional water supply system is on top of this. I know they're working with a university, and they have done a number of studies on the effects of microfibers in the water system. Everything remains safe, of course. And it's nice to see our regional water supply sort of on, I'm going to say, on the cutting edge on a lot of this stuff. They've studied, obviously we take sediment out of the lake water as it's treated and prepared for use. And I think they've done some good research in that, but I'm not an expert on the microfibers other than that, Councillor Chapman, if that's okay.
Yes, Councillor Chapman?
For you, Your Worship. So my next question would be, they're asking for a filter to be put on washing machines in the future. And would this give our lagoons more life, longevity, if those microfibers weren't going into the lagoon?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Chapman, I think the microfibers are more of an environmental concern. I don't know they would add a significant amount of, let's say, sediment, if that's what you were thinking about there. I think as it works its way through the food chain, those microfibers are really small. A lot of our clothing anymore is not cotton. It's all synthetic material. And as those microfibers from all of the synthetic clothing are working their way down through and then back through to us. So I know there's a lot of research being done on that, but I'm not, unfortunately, I can't provide much more than that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what's the pleasure of council? Are you in support that we should be sending a letter, or on this particular item? I believe everyone's on board with the other two items, right? That Councillor Chapman brought up? Because we have to direct Josh, because he's going to be writing letters for support. So am I hearing that we're okay with the two items? Councillor Charlton?
Through Your Worship, I'm in support of 7.16. The other two, I think we can leave for now.
Okay, what does the rest of council think? Deputy Mayor Andrews?
No, I think that we should support the capital gains tax on residents. I know it's not completely, sorry, through Your Worship. I know it's not completed yet, and there's still lots going on with those decisions. But, you know, maybe if this is something we can do to support to get ahead of it, then it does make sense. I think we should support that. Okay,
thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. And Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. Following up Councillor Charlton's comments, I think there's an advantage to municipalities, the people of the community, to support their hospitals. And I don't know how that would be affected if all hospital funding was done provincially.
Councillor Chapman and then Councillor Oslach.
Is there some way that it could read not all funding, but the province needs to do some funding for the hospitals, and what they're asking for is replacement of equipment, which it costs millions of dollars for some of the equipment that's required, and it's a lot of money to try to raise within the municipality.
Okay, Councillor Osage.
Yes, Your Worship. I know all the service clubs in Elmer support the hospital and the hospital's equipment. I know as a Legion member, we support, give money to the hospital for CAT scan machines and all kinds of equipment. But I do support Councillor Chapman's motion to support capital gains and to support the hospitals.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing is that there's the two items, Councillor Chapman, that most councillors are comfortable with. Is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
And one was the capital gains and the other was the hospital one. Are you satisfied that we can at least write some letters of support for those particular items? Okay. Josh, did you get that? Just so I know we're kind of throwing a lot of stuff at you right now.
Certainly, through your worship. So I'll just reread the resolution because we'll just need the permission of the mover and seconder to amend the action. So right now I've got, this is moved by Councillor Barber, seconded by Councillor Ham, that item 7.1 to 7.21 of the June 7th, 2021 consent agenda be adopted as presented. It being noted that letters of support will be sent for items 7.14, 7.15, and 7.16.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Josh. Is council satisfied with that? And were there any other comments about any other item? Because I'll think it's Councillor Charlton first and then Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Through your worship, I think we should send a letter of support for 7.11, the exemption of the carbon tax for primary agricultural producers. Thank you.
Okay. All right, what does council think about that? You know, are you supporting Councillor Charlton with that? I don't see anybody saying no to it, so I guess they're okay with that, Councillor Charlton.
Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor Andrews?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, is there an opportunity that there's, you know, if there's so many of these items that are being brought forward that, you know, it's so hard to make decisions on whether we support based on if there are pertinent to our community, our municipality, that maybe we give the staff an opportunity to look at these prior to us deciding if we support or not. It's just, obviously there's quite a few here tonight, so it's really hard. I mean, it's easy to say you support it, but if you don't know the whole background and if it really, you know, is pertinent to us, I think we need that information maybe up front and in the future. It's just a thought.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. And I have to say also, just to remind council, if any of these particular items on the consent agenda are something that you believe in and you think that we really need to, you know, look into it further, by all means, please call staff before our council meeting so that they are prepared and give them an opportunity to know that you are going to be asking questions about that particular item, and that gives them time to research it and get the proper information so that we can all make good decisions. So maybe in the future, we'll definitely keep that in mind to call staff prior to council meeting, if that's okay with council. I think it's easier on our staff and they can certainly look into it further. I think that would be helpful, as Deputy Mayor Andrews said. That way we really understand, is this something that is of concern to our community? So, but we're fine. I think, Josh, we're okay with what we've talked about this evening, right?
Yes, Your Worship. Just to clarify, we will be adding, with the permission of the mover and seconder, item 7.11 to the list of items to include a follow-up letter of support on. Right, and I think everyone's okay with that. I haven't seen anybody not agreeing with that, so. Okay, and I wanted to speak to item 7.20.
I just wanted to add that because of the proclamation being on the consent agenda this evening, I just wanted council and our residents and staff to know that that staff will be raising the pride flag on June the 24th, and it will be up till June 30th. That's just so that you're all aware of when the flag will be raised, okay? So oh, sorry, Councillor Oslach.
What time?
The staff will be doing it because of COVID-19. We won't be having a formal flag raising like we typically would do. So staff will be raising that, and there won't be a formal raising that day.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. You're welcome. Are there any further questions or comments before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll start into the action items. The first report is Fire 0521.
That report, Fire 0521, entitled Elmer Fire Department Operational Update, be received for information.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton. Chief McComb, would you like to just give us a brief overview of your report, please?
Certainly, Your Worship. Thank you. Again, good evening, everyone. So basically what I'm trying to give is council an idea of the items that I find that are of particular interest to Council of Elmer. So as you can see, I've identified the suppression calls to date, education initiatives, fire department operations, which of course is important, fire department enforcement, of course. And I try to include a good news story for council. I know so much of what we deal with sometimes doesn't have a happy ending, so I try to put a twist on that and try to give council some good news stories when we can in the emergency services. So that was just for my information, and then I briefly touch on all the items again to remind council if there's any issues or anything that comes up before or during, I will always be in attendance to answer questions for emergency services. This is just kind of my update that I hope to bring in front of you quarterly and keep you all part of the fire department and keep you aware of what's going on. And of course, that'll be separate from our budget times and other emergency meetings that you may call me in to address. So I go on to public education. We put some signage on the fire trucks because unfortunately doing stuff in the public is just not happening. So a lot of our neighboring municipalities are looking at this as well. It's an opportunity to put our messaging out there that working smoke alarms do save lives. Real quick, our fire department operations with our washer extractor system is up and running. There's a picture of it there. What this does is it works on the decontamination side of things for firefighters after attending a scene or a smoke event, an actual structure fire. We have the ability now to wash our fire gear on scene at the station, and turnaround for firefighters to be back in action is quite quick. So it's also a huge safety thing. If you ask any of the firefighters, my big initiative and drive for our firefighters is their safety. And this was set in motion by your prior fire chief, and I commend him for taking that action and leading the way on this one for me. Our training, we still continue to train every Thursday of the month with 2 platoons at a time. So we still have to keep training and being prepared for emergencies. That won't stop. Some of the enforcement, I've been working with the clerk's department on some of our issues in town with burn complaints, and of course we have one fire inspection on the John Street location, and the fire chief is working with the Ontario Fire Marshal's office to work on a resolution on that, and I will take any action that is required to see that one through. My good news stories I have for you tonight, I'm very proud to share this with you, and it makes me extremely proud to be part of your fire department. We received a letter from Allen County EMS regarding an emergency call where our crews assisted EMS. Unfortunately, the call didn't have a great outcome, but the EMS folks sent a letter to the fire department telling us how outstanding of a job our firefighters did and how professional they were. So I always like to share those stories with council as well. Another one that we received was from our fire chief, Brent Smith of Malahide Township. I'm sure you're all aware of the big junkyard fire, and your fire department was there and assisted for approximately 8 hours. Our aerial truck made a huge impact in that fire. That's a great piece of equipment that not only protects us, but with our relationship with our Elgin County fire departments, it's able to make a difference with them as well. This really demonstrated the ability of our fire departments to work together, and it was my first time to work together with the Elgin fire departments. And again, the teamwork that I witnessed and was part of was outstanding. And again, it made me extremely proud to be part of the Elmore Fire Department and lead that team. Your worship, that's really all I have at this time. You can see where I pull into the pillars of the municipality, delivering municipal services in a safe and effective manner, and ensuring public safety through our appropriate resources. So I thank everybody for your time and letting me be with you tonight. If anybody has any questions for me, please go ahead and ask. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this report, Chief McCone. It's great, and it's uplifting to hear all the good news, that we're, and accolades that our fire department's getting. So kudos to you and the volunteer fire department. Are there any questions, Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Worship. To the chief, just want to echo the comments of Mayor French. It's nice to hear from you and the fire department on a quarterly basis other than just in budget time. And I really like the injection of the personal side of the firefighters to show their people. So thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor.
Are there any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Chief McCone. The next item up is OPNS, and I believe the number is 1121. Yes.
That report, Operations 1121, entitled Lagoon Operations Capital Project Review, be received for information, and that council accept the proposal from the Ontario Clean Water Agency to undertake a review of the lagoon performance, aeration, and sludge accumulation as outlined in their proposal.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Ham, and I'll turn it over to Rob. It's quite a lengthy report there, Rob, so I'm sure you got some interesting tidbits to share with us. Give us a little more information.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. As council will see from the 2021 budget, we've got a number of strategic initiatives and EA reviews and optimization studies at the lagoon. We sat down with the Ontario Clean Water Agency this year. We went to review those. And I think my recommendation to council is before we start some of these larger initiatives, I think that we probably need a little bit better of a sort of an initial overview and maybe a roadmap that I think will pay off for us long. I think these initiatives are still warranted, but I'm suggesting we chunk out a little bit at first and then build ourselves a roadmap by which we can take on some of these other things a little more strategically. And you'll see the one thing that came to light already is we had the lagoon sediment level mapping in for next year. And it became very evident during the discussions that's maybe one of the things that we should actually tackle first. And then the difference with sort of me going out and getting a sedimentation map is all that information is going to come back to me, and it's going to take me a long time to assimilate it and learn it. And by putting sort of Aqua in charge of getting that, they already tweaked the scope. They said if we're going to do the mapping, we should also do the testing, and that will help build us along the way. So they got the prices for the sediment mapping, and they also built the scope around that to be able to give us sort of what we need in the future. So I think this is probably a good first step for us if that works for council.
Okay, thank you, Rob. And I have to say, I really like the approach that you're taking on this. I think we'll learn a lot from it, and it's likely going to pay dividends in the long run, and we'll approach it in the right manner. Are there any questions or comments about this report? Councillor Charlton?
Through your worship to Rob, do you know how much sediment was removed last time the lagoons were emptied? I know it was like 30 or 40 years ago. I just wondered how much buildup there was at that time. Must be recorded someplace.
Through your worship to Councillor Charlton, I don't, that's one of the things I'm going to go and find as well, to see if we can look at what was done, how much the buildup over time, and then we'll have a better understanding of how much there is down there.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Rob. The next report is Rec 0121.
That report, Rec 0121, entitled Program Updates 2021 Aquatic Program, be received for information, and that council endorses and supports the YWCA decision to provide aquatic programming in a reduced capacity for recreational swimming and swimming lessons for the 2021 season, as outlined in correspondence dated May 11th, 2021. And further, that council grants contractual relief from the bylaw 5218 Exhibit A, pool operation, partnership parameters, section A, C, and J, it being noted that the YWCA shall take all reasonable measures to uphold terms for which relief has been granted.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Barber and Councillor Charlton. And good evening, Tom. Would you care to do a bit of an overview of your report for us, please?
Yes, Your Worship. I'll give a bit of a summary. Staff's been meeting with the YWCA since early February. We've been working on an aquatics program for the summer of 2021. And with the reduced operating capacity at 25%, the YWCA is confident in providing aquatic programming and working with the town to keep expenses down and revenues as stable as possible. So last year, council made a really tough decision to keep the pools closed with a target of opening for 2021. Staff in the YWCA have been working with the most recent guidelines provided by Southwestern Public Health relating to reopening pools, splash pads, and waterfronts. Staff has met with the YWCA, and we've met down on site to review the pool house. We have the pool house set up for easy patron flow, just taking all the COVID-19 precautions with safety in the patrons of the facility. A couple things that we've done is we've installed an exterior shower. That's to prevent people just from using the female and male change rooms strictly through the doors, and then the shower's right to the right-hand side. So with the YWCA only being able to operate at 25% capacity, this does possess some challenges for the Y's ability to fully provide the 20.5 hours of public swimming and possibly the length of the season. But the YWCA staff are working to minimize all expenses as much as possible. So, and then staff as well, we're looking at alternate ways to generate revenues. That's all I have, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Are there any questions? Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. To Tom, if I may, if the province relaxes the guidelines in any particular manner, is there flexibility within the plan to expand the 25%?
Through Your Worship, Councillor Barber, yes, absolutely. If the councillor relaxes any of those protocols, and if they say you can operate at 50%, the YWCA will move to 50%. So yes, there is latitude with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Charlton.
Through Your Worship, I don't know if the pool program, do we normally take a loss on that program? And I just, I know we'll take a loss this year. I just don't know how much more of a loss it might be than normal.
Through you, Your Worship, I would like to defer that to the treasurer if I could.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Charlton, it looks like in 2019, the tax levy amount for the pool and the splash pad was about $56,000. We're anticipating this year at 25% capacity to be about $65,000. But Malahide shares part of the cost. So depending on how much of the expenses are going to be covered by Malahide, that could fluctuate. Through review with Tom, it looks like it's going to be about 65,000 worst case, but probably closer to 60,000.
Okay, thank you. I don't like to turn a loss like that, but I think that's the least we can do for our town as well. Since we were shut down last year, and I think we should provide that recreational service this year. So I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship, to Tom. I commend you Tom, for opening up the splash pad, and I think it's a great idea for the town of Aylmer to get the kids out, especially during this hot, humid weather. And I really look forward to it myself. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
The next report is REC 0221.
That report, REC 0221, entitled Equipment Replacement 72-inch zero-turn mower, be received for information, and that council accepts the quote from Huron Tractor in the amount of $16,600 plus applicable taxes for a 2021 John Deere Z994R zero-turn diesel commercial mower, and further that council deems the existing 2007 Kubota 326 zero-turn mower surplus and authorizes staff to dispose of the unit by public sale.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton. Is there any further information you want to share, Tom? This is a pretty self-explanatory report.
At this moment, Your Worship, I don't have anything else to add to the report.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Charlton?
Your Worship, Tom, did you take the mower for a test drive, or anybody take it for a spin around the parks?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Charlton, we've been on similar types of that mower, but we didn't take that one or the other one for a test drive.
Okay,
they're all very similar.
Good.
Councillor Oslach?
Yes, Your Worship, to Tom. What do you think you'd get out of the old mower?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Oslach, that depends on when we list it, the time of year. But I'm basically thinking that Gov Deals will give us a they'll list it and we should get a fair price, but I can't give you an exact dollar amount.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is CAO 2621.
That report, CAO 2621, respecting the application Healthy Communities Initiative Round 2, be received as information, and that council support the submission of applications to the Elgin St. Thomas Community Foundation for the following projects: 1, enhanced lighting in Balmoral and Kinsman Parks, and 2, trail repairs in Balmoral and Kinsman Parks.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Ham and Councillor Oslach. Andy, did you want to give us any more information on this report?
Through Your Worship, it's a fairly straightforward report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions council has.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Does council have any questions for Andy? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is CAO 2221.
That report, CAO 2221, respecting a request to amend Canada Day statutory holiday date, be received as information, and that council grant approval for staff to utilize July 2nd as the replacement statutory holiday with the consent of the staff member.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Charlton. This is a pretty straightforward report. We've dealt with this before. Are there any questions or concerns? Councillor Charlton?
Through your worship, is it just worked out the last couple of years because of the dates on the calendar, or is this going to be a regular thing from now on?
I believe it's just the way the dates fall, but I'll have Andy clarify that, please.
Through your worship, yes, it's the way the dates fell, and also with COVID-19, there isn't a lot of Canada Day festivities going on that would require staff to come in for the last 2 years. So it makes it a bit less important to have staff shift their days.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Worship. To Andy, if a member of staff chooses not to switch days, how is that handled?
Through your worship, the good question. They would just report to work regularly on they take the statutory day and then they report on the other day. So we should have coverage pretty well for both days. So it usually doesn't end up with an issue where we won't have coverage. And I don't think at that time that our town hall will be open yet. So it shouldn't be an impact to residents needing services.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. And are you opposed, Councillor Charlton?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, I just lost a video here, but I'll try to get back on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item up is report CAO 2421.
That report CAO 2421 respecting the Highway 3 bypass land hold be received as information, and that council consider authorizing the mayor to sign the letter requesting a removal of the Highway 3 bypass.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Ham. And Andy, would you please give an overview of this? I know we've all seen a lot to do with this particular item, but maybe you can just give us a bit more information on it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it seems weird. I'm just in month 3 now, but I have done a deep dive into this issue. You probably all know more about it than I do, but just looking back at the historical records from the 70s, it really appears that there was a kind of movement to expand and create a bunch of highways at this time. It was shortly after the McDonald-Cartier, the extension, shortly after those types of developments, and it looked like they might have an increased truck traffic due to the St. Thomas Ford plant that was in Southwold. But certainly now it has been studied by the county. There is no real need for it. And I think as a municipality, it's fair for us to say now that our land's been on hold for 45 years. It does have a lot of impacts on our ability to grow or to attract manufacturing or other things to some of our industrial areas. And it also has a lot of impact if this proposal would go forward. If the proposal would go forward, it would reroute a lot of traffic from our downtown core. And I think some people would go, yay, no big trucks in our downtown core. But the other outcome of that is that you'd get a lot less business, and we have a very vibrant downtown. And keeping traffic and people going through the downtown is the best way to ensure that we do have that vibrant downtown going forward. So what's proposed is a letter trying to raise some awareness with the ministries on this, and to try to get starts kind of a groundswell of support for them to go back and have a serious discussion with us or the county about removing these holds. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Councillor Osledge.
Yes, Your Worship, to Andy. I think the county did an extensive report a couple of years ago on that. I think it cost them $100,000 or more. What's the outcome of that report? Any ideas?
Through you, Your Worship. So I read the report with a focus on the Yelmer section, really. And what the outcome really was that our traffic increased about 1% per year through the downtown area. And that if that became unsustainable in the future, what they recommended was that we would remove some on-street parking through the downtown to kind of expedite traffic, which is never great because you don't want people speeding through your downtown, and would likely mean that we need to put up more lights or crosswalks or the such. But either way, that option would still be preferable to subverting our downtown. So even looking at us as a town taking on more responsibility to try to find properties that we could develop into off-street parking in the downtown. But all of that is so far in the future. I think that they thought in 1976 that there would need to be this large east-west additional corridor here to deal with the plant and the truck traffic. But it really, I mean, sometimes in downtown you do have to wait one light or two lights to get through a light, but that's not uncommon in cities. And if it's an expectation of the public that happens, then it's not the end of the world type thing. So the study did find that the bypass was not recommended for us. So if that answers your question.
Thank you, Andy.
Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Clerk 2321.
Report Clerk 2321 entitled Encroachments for Outdoor Patios Under Special Circumstances be received for information, and that Council approves the encroachment for outdoor patios under special circumstances policy as presented, and that Council exempts applications from public notification requirements outlined in the encroachment for outdoor patios under special circumstances for 2021 policy, for 2021 rather, and further, that Council considers giving 3 readings to the bylaw adopting the encroachment for outdoor patios under special circumstances policy.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Barber and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Josh, did you have anything further to add? I believe we did something like this last year, did we not?
Yes, through your worship, Council will recall in June of 2020, a resolution was passed to allow staff to process these types of applications through the site plan control process. And Council had opted to waive the site plan control process fee at the time. And at that time, it was also noted that if the legislation transitioned to a more permanent operating standard in 2021, that staff would bring back a policy specific to patio requirements and to refine the application process. So really the objective here is to achieve a more permanent operating standard and to streamline the existing process. With the recent provincial announcement looking like patios would be able to open as of Friday, we're really hoping to expedite this and assist our local businesses wherever we can. It's also worth noting that the policy is limited in scope to encroachments under special circumstances. So in this case, the provincial state of emergency would quantify that. And as well, and as a result, fees that you would normally find in a more generic municipal encroachment policy haven't been included, because again, we're really trying to accommodate local businesses wherever we can here. And don't want to cause any extra red tape. Really what we're trying to do is sort of provide the minimum due diligence that we must as the town. So finally, staff are recommending that Council consider giving 3 readings to the bylaw to approve the policy. And that'll just allow us to assist our businesses in a timely manner. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Charlton?
Through your worship, is there quite a demand for patio space from various businesses in town?
Through your worship, and to Councillor Charlton, in looking at our records from last year, we didn't process any applications through the site plan control process. But that said, we have had several inquiries this year. from businesses that would benefit from a more streamlined program. So we have had several inquiries to answer your question, Councillor Charlton.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next item up is Clerk 2421.
That report, Clerk 2421, entitled W. Martin Drain Part Abandonment, be received for information, and that council considers giving 3 readings to the bylaw to abandon a 350-meter part of the W. Martin Drain.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Chapman. Did you want to speak to this as well, Josh?
Certainly, through your worship, in early April of 2021, notice was sent to the Township of Malahide, just providing an overview of the town's intent to abandon a 350-meter part of the W. Martin Municipal Drain that's located within the Cottonwood subdivision development that's currently underway. It should be noted that this action to abandon the drain is in name only, with no impact on the landowner's outlet. The tile will be replaced and upsized from a 250 millimeter to an 850 millimeter pipe, with the cost to upsize being borne entirely by the developer of the subdivision and not apportioned to the upstream landowners. So the tile will then be incorporated as part of the town storm sewer system upon assuming the development. And with there having been no appeals following the public process in accordance with the Drainage Act, staff are recommending that council proceed with 3 readings of the bylaw to abandon that 350-meter part of the drain.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any questions or comments about this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is new business and matters of urgency. Don't see any hands up. The next one is 3 readings. So we'll be looking at suspending procedural policies.
That council suspends the procedural policies to proceed with 3 readings of bylaw 3521, being a bylaw of the town of Elmer respecting the permitting, regulating, and governing of special events on public and private property. Bylaw 3421 being a bylaw to adopt a policy regarding encroachments for outdoor patios under special circumstances. Bylaw 3621 being a bylaw to authorize a draft plan of approval for a condominium development pursuant to section 51 of the Planning Act, and signing of a development agreement between Fari Holdings and SAB Development and the Corporation of the Town of Elmer for the development of lands located at Plan 145, Part Park Lot 6, RP 11R 8159, Parts 1, 2, and 7 to 15 in the Town of Elmer. And bylaw 3721 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the closing documents for the sale of 4.6 acres of land on Progress Drive to Tricorp Transportation Incorporated. And finally, bylaw 3821 being a bylaw to provide for the abandonment of a part of the W. Martin Drain in the Town of Elmer.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I need someone to move and second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Ham. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, could Josh read that again? He does such a good job reading that, just rattling it all off together.
Well, he will be reading it shortly. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. And we'll move on to the next resolution. Josh, please.
That council approves and gives 3 readings to bylaw 3521 being a bylaw of the Town of Elmer respecting the permitting, regulating, and governing of special events on public and private property. Bylaw 3421 being a bylaw to adopt a policy regarding encroachments for outdoor patios under special circumstances. Bylaw 3621 being a bylaw to authorize a draft plan of approval for condominium development pursuant to section 51 of the Planning Act, and the signing of a development agreement between Fari Holdings and SAB Development and the Corporation of the Town of Elmer for the development of lands located at Plan 145, Part Park Lot 6 RP 11R 8159, Parts 1, 2, and 7 to 15 in the Town of Elmer. Bylaw 3721 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the closing documents for the sale of 4.6 acres on Progress Drive to Tricorp Transportation Incorporated. And finally, bylaw 3821 being a bylaw to provide for the abandonment of a part of the W. Martin drain in the town of Elmer.
Thank you. Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Councillor Chapman, are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up, inquiries by members. Okay, that was a tie, so we'll go with Councillor Charlton first and then Councillor Barber.
Through your worship, I was noticing the former Carnation property on the way into Aylmer. Does the town own that property or does someone else own it? And is the town going to cut the grass, or whoever owns it going to put a herd of goats there to keep the grass down, or what?
Well, I can tell you that the town doesn't own it, but as far as the goats, maybe we'll have to turn that over to Andy.
Through you, your worship. So certainly if one of the issues is that our bylaw is engaged on a complaint basis, so we can treat this as a complaint from yourself if you want. We can engage bylaw to contact them. I know Josh has a soft touch, so he usually reaches out to them first and kind of gives them a bit of a warning that if they don't get in line with the standards for having their yard trimmed, they'll get somebody issuing an order on them. So we can look into that for sure.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Barber, you're next.
Thank you, Worship. It's been the practice of council for many years to have 3 readings and where necessary to have those 3 readings in one particular session if it's a timely item. I wonder if the time has come for council and staff to reconsider that practice and perhaps come up with another system.
Andy, would you care to answer Councillor Barber's inquiry?
Thank you, your worship. Yes, so to give you some background, I originally came from the city of Hamilton, and they only did 1 reading there. And when I went to North County, my previous employer, they did 3 readings, and I switched them to just doing 1 readings. Under the legislation, there's actually only petition drains are the only business that a council actually is legislated to do 3 readings upon. So it is something that if council wants us to look at, we could amend the procedural bylaw. I don't know how frequently the clerk amends the procedural bylaw. My preference generally with amending the procedural bylaw is to just open it up to council and say, here's a couple months, send us your input, and then take that back and do a larger review of it rather than do little changes piece by piece. But ultimately, it's council's procedures on how they want their meetings to go. So whatever council desires, it will be the end outcome.
Do you have anything further, Councillor Barber?
No, your worship. I just wanted to put the suggestion out there, not necessarily to be enacted now, okay, but to look at it down the road.
Okay, so basically what Andy's saying is that staff will take a look at it in a few months. So is that okay then, Councillor Barber? And we'll take I think what you're trying to say, Andy, is we look at the whole entire policy and not just do it bit by bit, but actually look at the whole procedural policy that we have.
Through you, yes. Through you, your worship, yes. So what I'd suggest is that we'll probably get Josh to recirculate it to everybody so that you've got a fresh copy of it, and have a read over. And if there's other things that you think are a hindrance in it, then you can identify that. But staff will also likely identify more than just that issue and bring forward a more fulsome report in late summer or early fall.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Is that okay then, Councillor Barber?
That's excellent, your worship. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further inquiries by members? Okay. We'll move on to statements and committee reports. Councillor Oslach?
Yes, your worship. A couple of comments. basically, our local MPP, Jeff Urick, brought forward a news conference last week about the new Blue Blocks initiative, and to be implemented in 2022 and 23. And at that news conference, he brought forward that the City of London was going to be the forerunner in the Blue Box because of the MRF, I guess, and the town of Elmer, and also all the local municipalities that was associated with the MRF and with the town of London were also indicated. So we're on the map, I guess, to do the Blue Box initiative in 2022, I guess, next year. And the second comment is to Tom Poland and the Parks Department. I applaud the flowers. The town of Elmer looks really good. The bridge baskets, the hanging baskets, and all the flower beds look great. I commend the Parks Department for doing this year, because last year was we got into the pandemic and we didn't know what to do, but this year it's looking great. Thanks, Tom, and thanks to Parks Department.
Thank you, Councillor Oslage. Deputy Mayor Andrews, and then Councillor Barber.
Thank you, through your worship. I'd just like to make just a general comment that, as things start to open up in our community, it's so amazing to see our staff step up, from the complex to the splash pad, and now with this evening, the pool. It's so much work has gone into this that I don't think a lot of people really understand, the safety protocols. But, another thing to mention is that while it may seem that it's an expense, that it's a loss, it's not a loss to our community. It's part of our community providing services to the people who pay the taxes, to the people who deserve to get out and want to get out and take their children to the splash pad and finally get some normalcy in their life. So I just kudos to everybody who's put so much work into this, and I hope that the residents of the town of Elmer, use the services as much as possible. That's what they're there for. And it's just great to see everything opening back up again. And I'm really happy to see all the progress that's been made. So thank you to staff.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. The Elgin Area Primary Water Board met last Thursday. We're on track fiscally. Commercial consumption is down slightly. Residential consumption is up slightly. There haven't been any water quality issues. Everything seems to be working as it should for the supply of clean, safe drinking water. Thank you.
That's good news, and thank you, Councillor Barber. Are there any other statements or committee reports this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the report of the mayor. I don't have anything specific to report, but I do want to extend, on behalf of Elmer Council and myself, our sympathy to the City of London. Mayor Holder was on the news this evening, and 4 people were killed last night, and it's a sad situation, and it can happen anywhere. And we've always got to be vigilant, and people sometimes they get angry, or things can happen and people can get hurt, and it can happen anywhere, and that's proof. And apparently the police that were interviewed said that they don't think there's ever been that large of a number. There's 4 people that were killed. So let's just think about the City of London and the families that are affected by this. It's tragic news. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, there is no meeting closed to the public this evening. So we'll entertain adjournment.
Council do now adjourn at 8:18 p.m.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, and it was a great meeting.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Have a great
Have a good
night,
night.
everyone.